I'm not going to do a funny intro this time because this is not a funny episode. This episode consists solely of intellectual conversation. We'll try to be more funny next week. On this episode, we do not have Chris Riley. This is the first episode where he couldn't make it. But we have Tin Demuse.
I couldn't imagine if all I ever had were bad interactions with the police.
Chris Cowart.
He said there's more differences within a race than there is between races.
Wesley Sullivan.
I find that my belief in God is very comforting to me at times.
Michael Lozano.
My cousin and my friends, we were smoking weed.
And as always, I'm Brainerd Brindle. I was also the only one who was able to record himself with a mic this episode. Everyone else was recorded through the Discord chat, so the quality's going to be a little lower, but you're just going to have to deal. And as for the intro music, I'll use this song I wrote when I was 16. And now we drop you without context into the Lost Context Podcast.
Lost on a road somewhere, car tire lost its air. No one comes around. Rain is the only sound. Why'd my cell phone die? I let out a sigh, tired and cold and wet, and I am hosed, I bet. Darkness creeping in, there's trembling in my chin. Who knows?
I've never recorded a podcast while driving,
Oh, are you gonna do that right now?
so now you can vent.
Hold on, I'm confused.
Start your fucking rant, goddammit!
My fucking professor does not teach, and it really pisses me off. The class is writing the research paper, so we're supposed to write a research paper. But what my teacher is doing is that he is just like fucking forcing his views down our throat about how a standard language shouldn't and doesn't exist, and how he doesn't care about grammar and this and that, and how he's not really going to guide us on our paper because he just wants it to be super genuine. I'm just like, that's all fun and games, and I kind of agree with you. However, this class is called writing the research paper, and we got to learn how to fucking do that shit adequately, because we're going to be asked to do this for the rest of our fucking scholarly careers or beyond that, and he's not doing it, and I think it's really fucking irresponsible. Like, he just telling us to hand it in. Like, well, I got it back, and I got a lot of comments and stuff, because I told him to go hard on mine, because I want to be challenged. And I told him straight up, like, the second day, like, I was just like, is every class going to be like that? Because the first two classes were just huge fucking, like, group discussions that has nothing to do with learning. We're just talking about, like, issues and stuff. Like, I got it the first night. The first time when we did that, I was just like, okay, he just wants to have an open discussion, so that way it's like brainstorming and potential topics for people to, like, write about. So but now, like, the majority of classes are like that.
What kind of a class is it?
Research paper. It's writing the research paper. The entire class is supposed to be writing a research paper and then hand it in at the end. For the whole semester, you're writing one paper.
That sounds dangerous as fuck. Like,
So yeah, I told on the second.
Is there anything else that goes into the grade besides that paper?
Participation.
Oh, it's one of those college classes? Because that's garbage.
It's just one paper. No, I know I'm gonna fucking get an A. Because I don't know. Because I have a whole bunch of handouts, because I had taken this class before, but I had to drop it. And so I have like a bunch of handouts like from my previous teacher, who did a really good fucking job. Like, he did it. He was just like, okay, here are the due dates, and then he like went through everything, like, basically. And it was really good. And I'm just like comparing, and I was like, this guy's not teaching us shit, and this guy did. Like, too bad.
Where are you going to school at, Michael?
LaGuardia Community College in Long Island City, Queens.
Oh, dude, I am a super, super huge proponent of community colleges, man. 13th and 14th grade, man, they're the shit.
No, my friend who went to Queens College as a 4-year college, he was just like, well, damn, I kind of wish I went to fucking community college for the first 2 years instead, so that way I could at least get a piece of paper saying that I accomplished something halfway, instead of waiting 4 years to get one. I'm like, I get you.
Well, like,
because and it's cheaper. And it's cheaper.
But here in Wisconsin, though, if you go to, so we have a bunch of little 2-year universities and stuff, and UW-Madison is one of the best schools in the country. If you go to one of these 2-year universities and you get a C average, you're guaranteed a spot at Madison.
Yeah, over here it's
Really?
kind of like that because my school is part of CUNY, if you guys know what that is. So the city
No, I
university,
don't.
the City University of New York. So
Oh, okay.
so that includes like Hunter College and a whole bunch of different like good schools around here. And so yeah, so it's like in a network, so we could easily so credits and shit
It's the same
like
thing,
pass over.
for
Yes.
sure.
And then there's SUNY, which is the State University of New York. So that would be like for upstate and for Long Island.
Right. Interesting.
And then those
Yeah, no, I always thought that was a huge boon that our school system does that. Like I basically don't think that I'm going to, unless my kids get like a full ride scholarship somewhere, they're going to a community college because it's fucking stupid to take all of your gen ed classes at a 4-year university that's going to cost you fucking $250,000 for those 2 years.
Yeah.
That's just insane. There's no good reason to do it.
And plus you have something to proof to show for it, like when you're halfway. Like my that was like my friend's like main point about wishing he went to community college, as though he just had like a little associates just to show something, just to present
Yeah,
something.
dude, you could manage a packet.
Yeah, just before just you're like, oh yeah, I got my associates, so I'm still in school, I'm gonna get this in 2 years, and then that looks good actually. Like especially if you went to community college and then you jump to like a really good school, like they're like, oh yeah, this guy's fucking amazing. Like, but yeah, school in New York is free. That's right.
Okay, now I want to vent about something.
Okay.
Oh God.
You've got a hypocritical person on the internet, and they can never let anything slide. Every time anybody baits them or argues with them or anything, they go in and they have to get the last word, and they're just one of those kinds of people. But then,
Are we talking about Tara?
I'm just giving you
Brian got real quiet.
I'm just giving you a hypothetical situation here. But I
Tim,
just
you're
want
not
to
supposed
point out.
to ask fucking questions.
But I just want to point out that the fact that your mind went there is probably telling.
That's more about you, Tim, than it is about Brian. You think that way about Tara, Tim?
No, I just happened to see that she posted something about she was arguing with somebody and the guy was like, oh, I see how it is. You need to get the last word. And she typed last word. And he was like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And she typed last word again and then did it a third time. And so it just was very applicable to the situation.
Well, it's okay. Like, if someone points out, oh, you always want to get the last word, that means it bothers them. And if you don't give a shit about them, then of course do it. Like,
This hypothetical person who may or may not be Tara, but it also could be applied to anybody. They can't let anything go. And then they make a post, a meme, saying every time they post something, nobody can let it go or whatever. They're let's hypothetically say it's a 3-door meme.
okay, I saw this.
And
So I am 100% right, is basically what you're telling me.
hypothetically, you might be.
Hypothetically, we're about to hear about this in the admin chat tomorrow because Tara totally listens to this podcast.
So this person then makes a post basically saying that nobody can ever leave anything alone or whatever. When I post stuff, everybody's got to jump on me. So your options are, you can scroll by, which you've often done, and not call this person out, and then nothing happens because they just get to have their own way, basically, and you don't get to call them a hypocrite because you're just going to remain silent and ignore their post. Or you can call them out and call them being a hypocrite, and then you prove their point because they say, see, you're a hypocrite because you can't let anything slide. Here, I posted this thing and you've got to jump on me for it.
Or just don't post.
That was option number one.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that. Yeah, for me, when like there was very few times I posted like controversial opinions on there that people disagree with. But what I do is just that I'm gonna post my opinion, and then like a lot of the times I have done it, it was always like a string of people being like, "What the fuck?" Like, "Oh hell no, I disagree." This, and that. So I'm just like, "What?" I'm just like. So when that happens, I'm just like, I'm not gonna respond to you motherfuckers. I didn't ask for your opinion. I just wanted to say mine. Like,
yeah.
So I just let them be.
I'm really
just,
of the mind. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I know that might seem like a really pussy thing to do, but it's just like, no, I just want to get my voice out there. I don't give a fuck about your voices. Like, I might think about something and I might disagree, and I probably have reasons why, but I don't even feel like putting energy in this anymore. So just leave it at, because I don't feel like doing a back and forth anyway. So I'll just leave it at that. Like,
what are you of the mind of?
Oh, I don't know, man. Sometimes Michael gets to droning and then I forget what I was going to talk about. I'm just kidding. I was just going to make a joke about Michael droning.
was it two jokes? Because there was two laughs.
Wow.
It's true.
Okay, what are you of the mind of?
What do you mean? I was not kidding. Like, I was really only going to make a joke about Michael droning.
Oh, okay.
And then he droned over it, which made the joke even funnier.
Okay, I got it.
That's because you fucking interrupted me, you stupid ass bitch.
So
well, you can't make a joke about somebody droning if you don't interrupt the droning. Feel me? This podcast has already been fucking 78% Michael, and we've only been going for 15 minutes.
Knock knock is there interrupting cow.
I didn't even know you were recording.
So here's the conundrum is you can be silent, which is what they say you should be, and then they get to have their own way, or you can call them out on it, and then they say you proved me right. You can't just leave things. You can't just scroll by it and leave it alone.
Do you really want that battle axe to come after you? That's what you have to ask yourself.
Well, that's a fair question.
Sometimes it's really funny to see that you caused white men to write paragraphs.
So a perfect example is today Christian decided that he was going to post that thing about the like preteens and teens crying about the state of America.
Yeah.
And normally I do let things go, but at the same time, I respect Christian and I do kind of think less of him because he looks at something like that and goes, ha ha, stupid fucking preteens. Like, motherfucker, I thought way dumber shit than that when I was a fucking preteen. Like, how is it their fault that now this decided to go and fucking record that and their parents thought it was a good idea to put it on the internet? I guarantee you that half of those kids don't have the same opinion fucking 5 years from now.
I agree.
And yet Christian used to be one of those people. Christian always talks about how he was a fucking SJW cuck. And this motherfucker wants to make fun of other people who are SJW cucks? I mean, I just had to let him know, like, hey, man, I think less of you for this. Like, just so you know. Like, this is fucked up. And I think it's pretty fucked up hilarious. Like, you know what I mean? And it just is what it is. Like, I'm not going to treat him any differently or whatever, but I did feel the need to call him out on it, even though normally I wouldn't do something like that. You know what I mean?
Are you saying you just need to pick your battles?
I really think that that's what it comes down to is, yes, 100% picking your battles. Because, like, realistically, like, the Hopkins thing was a perfect battle to be picking because he was constantly being a douchebag and then pretending like he didn't know that he was being a douchebag. Yeah, right, motherfucker. And you know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff I could totally get behind. But I do think that with Jeffrey, she started it months ago. You know what I mean? And it slowly progressed into Jeffrey turning into an asshole about it, which I think that he did cross the line, like tagging John and stuff like that. That's really super fucked up. And why the fuck would any human being do that? But that's beside the point. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely think that if she would have just left Jeffrey do his whatever it is that Jeffrey does, you know, like it would have never been a problem.
We're bringing back the CLC week in segment week review. So this kind of leads into an actual topic, and it's inspired by the group, but it actually applies in general to people. And that's about dealing with irrational people and how it's a lose-lose situation. I think that if you have an irrational person who's kind of popular amongst other people and they're posting their opinions all the time and blah, blah, blah. And this can also be applied to Trump and Hillary, I think. In an internet situation, you can't win because you can come at them with reasonable arguments and they can blow it off by saying you're stupid, essentially. They may put it into different words or come up with an argument of their own that's just nonsensical. But essentially, they're just saying you're stupid or haha, triggered you or whatever. And then they say, everybody dogpiles me. I get, I trigger every time I say anything, these people get triggered. So you can't say anything to them because then they'll just call you out as being a triggered, stupid, whatever.
Right.
Or you can just ignore them and they run around and post their shit and nobody ever calls them out on it. So they're free to do whatever they want. But
right.
No matter what happens, they have their group of friends that they can run to and say, he's stupid, and all the friends affirm them. And so then there's this mob mentality where you just lose. And so in a situation like that, the best thing you can do that I can think of is just to kind of stop being around the person because they're just bringing you down all the time.
So here is, when I got out of high school, I went and I lived in a place for a little while and, and shit like that. And everything was fine. And then my roommate lost his job. And rather than, talking to me about it or whatever, he just moved all his shit out while I was at work. And so I couldn't afford the place anymore. So I moved in with my aunt, who is bipolar and regularly goes off her meds.
Oh.
Like, just will tell me, oh, yeah, I don't take my meds anymore. And then turns into the most unreasonable fucking crazy person that you've ever met in your entire life. And like, dude, my rent used to fluctuate like over the course of the...
We lost him. Tim is, I don't know where he's going, but Tim is recording this podcast from in his car.
What do you do? What do you do when you're dealing with somebody that is that irrational and has no chance of being rational? Well, you're right. You try and put yourself out of the situation, but I didn't really have a choice for about 6 months while, I was saving up and trying to get ready and find a roommate and so on. And so my solution was I legitimately walked on eggshells with everything that I did. And it was awful. Like
that's not really a situation you can run from. You had to be with her, right?
Right. Well, exactly. Until I got my money right, I couldn't afford, first month's rent and a down payment and still be able to pay the next month's rent on top. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it would have just been way too much money and I didn't have a super awesome job because I was fucking 18.
Because another thing you could do is try to fight fire with fire and you start being irrational and it doesn't solve anything either.
Well, and especially with the person that is on the mortgage. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way to fight fire with that because then she just kicks me out and then I'm homeless.
Right.
And I find fighting fire with fire is almost universally counterproductive.
I agree.
Which is one of the reasons why I find it rather odd when some people decide to call people out on things. And the way that they do it is in just as brash and disgusting a manner as what the original post was. Right. And so realistically, you end up contributing to toxicity just in a different manner. And it's okay because it's your toxicity and not someone else's. And that's really weird.
Right.
Not that I don't do that, because I 100% do. Like, I went hard on Jamie James because she posted something that triggered me when I was drunk. And you know what I mean? Like, I apologized to her in a Facebook message, but that was still super fucking wrong of me. I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? Like, but it is what it is, Like, I get it that we're all guilty, but when you're doing it weekly or daily, there's probably an issue.
Yeah. Here's another thing I was thinking about. Let's say somebody says what I said earlier. They make a post and say, none of y'all can just scroll by. You always got to react to my stuff, and you can't just leave me be and let me have my opinion. The thing is, you can't quantify the people that scrolled by. All you can see is those who react. And so
Right.
if you were to do statistics and say who scrolled by and who reacted, well, you can see who reacted, but you can't see who scrolled by. And so it's a very hollow statement to make because you don't know how many actually did scroll by.
Right. Well, and like every once in a while when there's a really spicy and good meme in the group and it gets like 45 fucking reacts and stuff like that, and then you realize how many people are actually lurking this group at once.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Two people came in here and said something to you, and you're talking about how we all can't leave you alone? What the fuck?
Yeah, that could be a good indication. I actually
You know?
I actually do scroll by a lot of stuff. And the reason is because of what I'm saying. I think I could point out flaws in this argument or something, and I think it will just come back to bite me because I'm dealing with an irrational person.
Right.
It's frustrating.
But at the same time, though, I saw that you had pointed out in Levi had posted that thing about Milo Yiannopoulos getting shouted at or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, you posted what I felt was a very reasonable statement, you know, that it could be all blown out of proportion, or those people could have been acting in a very disgusting manner. And Levi said something to the effect of, well, I don't care when any side does it. And at least it's an intellectually consistent argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it seemed like it was a worthwhile time to add in your comment because it was received by somebody that at least understands that, yeah, this isn't a logical point of view that I carry, but at least I'm consistent.
So in that case, perhaps it's better to just put it out there. And if the irrational people react to it, who gives a fuck as long as somebody responds positively or gets something out of it?
I think that's a very good conclusion.
Man, you really have to have a lot of self-control within you because it really messes with your emotions. Like irrational people have a tendency they have a knack for really, it feels like you can't win everything they do. They're coming out on top and you're frustrated. And you have to think clearly and be like, it doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter how many times they say I'm stupid, as long as I'm helping somebody and I know that I'm not stupid. I hope that I'm not stupid. I don't want to just negate everything they say. I do consider their words because I'm a centrist and I have to consider both sides of the argument. But oftentimes I think I'm not wrong, but it feels like they're coming out on top.
The only reason that happens, though, again, is just that smug sense of virtue. You know what I mean? Like, because we all think that we're virtuous in one way or another.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we all have that one thing that we kind of pride ourselves on, and most people, they value their opinions incredibly, and
Right.
you know, I mean, I don't exactly know where I'm going with that.
Well, I it's a delicate balance to walk because I believe that I'm right in many cases, but I also want to analyze myself and see if there's anything to their words and make sure I'm not wrong. So, because you don't want to become an irrational person too. You don't want to just say things and be like, I don't give a fuck.
Oh no, I'm with you there. I definitely, I try my best to see every single facet of an argument, but it's fucking impossible. There is no way that you can ever look at really even both sides in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, you could do your best, but realistically, like, I'm always going to, you know, be a little bit biased towards conservative things, just like I think that you're going to be a little bit biased towards liberal things. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's just how it is. And I feel like the only thing that we can do is our best. And I feel like the more we can realize that in ourselves, we have this huge cognitive bias and this huge amount of hypocrisy, I think that then, you know, we can see a sea change of how people interact with each other. But until we can all realize that we're all full of shit, it's not going to happen.
And I like that you said pick your battles, because a lot of times I do tell myself that when it comes down to it, I think none of this even matters.
Well, I can't tell you how many times I type out an entire paragraph only to delete it. You know what I mean? Because, like,
Yeah.
sometimes that just makes me feel better. You know what I mean? To rant and rave for a little while, then to fucking delete it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even hit send. Like, I literally just type out the whole thing and then just delete it right in the chat box.
I've done that. You got any thoughts, Wes?
I don't know. I used to be someone that would type a big long paragraph and try and explain myself, but I've found that people are gonna be stuck in their own ways, and it just upsets me to get into an argument, and so I've just kind of sat back for the most part in the past year and a half or so, to be honest. So
Yeah.
So before I say this, I'm going to say something mean to Brian real quick because I haven't done it yet today. You're bald and your voice is high. But anyway. But I would argue that my mind has been changed more just by being friends with you and Chris and Wesley than any debate that I've ever had with even some of my best friends on the internet. Because there's something about just having some of these thoughts and ideas come through regular conversation as opposed to in sort of like a debate format, which is often what Facebook devolves into. And that has changed my mind way more than debating ever could.
That's interesting.
Like when Chris Riley will go into certain things that the government does that just seem ridiculous. Like, you think about it logically, and when I'm trying to argue for something that would be involving big government, and if he were to come in and debate me and be like, no, less government is better, and here's why, well, now I'm on the defensive. Whereas if he just organically brings something up, and we're talking about it a little bit, and I can actually let my brain feed into the logic a little bit, I feel like it really helps.
Yeah.
I see. Huh.
I do have another topic. I was kind of hoping we could get Chris Coward in on it.
Well, let's talk about something else for 15 minutes. He should be here soon.
Okay. You guys want to take a crack at a couple weird ethical dilemmas?
Sure.
Let's go for it.
I have
Can I cut the baby in half?
That's the only solution, Wesley. Go get my baby axe.
Let's see here. Okay, we'll start off with a really simple, dumb one. It's 3 a.m. and you're late getting home. As you approach the intersection, you notice that no one's around. Do you drive through the red light?
It depends. Am I lonely? It's 3 a.m. I must be lonely.
And also let's say there is no camera. I'm gonna stop.
I personally don't.
You don't drive through it?
I've never driven through a red light, and I come from an area where you probably could get away with it, and I still don't, just in case. You know what I mean?
That's funny because you're you're like all anti-cops and stuff, but you're also pro obey the rules. Except
here's
for
the thing,
when
though,
it comes to weed.
If the majority of us believe because it's a rule, it's because I respect other people. You know what I mean? Fuck the rules. I don't give a fuck about the rules. What I give a fuck about is the fact that there could be somebody crossing the street that's drunk late at night. You know what I mean? And what happens if they're wearing all black and I don't fucking see them? Like, that's my whole thing is I don't want to fucking hurt anybody. And in my opinion, if all I have to do is inconvenience myself for 30 seconds, that's worth it.
I guess I didn't really picture it as blowing through the red light, but in that case, I definitely agree.
Oh, in Marinette, we have this thing. It's called a Porterfield stop. When you're out on like county highways and stuff, you just turn off your lights, and if you don't see any more lights, you just drive right through it.
I'm a super nervous Nelly when it comes to driving, so I definitely would still stop at the light. So yeah.
I would stop too, but that's just because I have a conscience.
Because you won't ship alcohol through fucking UPS, you puss.
Yeah, that's the exact same reason. Although there have been times when I've I see that a stop sign is clear out in the neighborhood and there's no one around, and but I figure, and there's also times where I've driven down the same center of the road when no one's around because I figure it's safer. In Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment, the main character plots and carries out the murder of an old woman who has a considerable amount of money in her apartment. After killing her, he steals the... Holy shit. I didn't read that first part the first time through. He actually murdered her? What is this ethical... Like, where are the ethics after that? After killing her, he steals the money. He argues that, 1, she's a malicious old woman, petty, cantankerous, and scheming and useless to herself and to society, which happens to be true, and her life causes no happiness to herself or those around her. 2, her money, if found after her death, would only fall into the hands of chiselers anyway, whereas he could use it. That's stupid. Like, he's justifying stealing after he just murdered somebody? I'm skipping that one.
Yeah, that's a really bad... That's not an ethical dilemma at all. Don't fucking kill people. Next!
You're shopping and you notice a woman stuffing a pair of stockings into her purse. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I was just saying, if the Russian lady is super bourgeois, are you sure the Bolsheviks can't kill her, Tim?
I mean, yeah, still positive at Wesley.
Okay.
I mean, the Bolsheviks might think that they can, but I disagree with that assessment.
Okay.
Here's a simple one. You're shopping and you notice a woman stuffing a pair of stockings, or whatever, into her purse. Do you report her? You snitch?
Where is this at?
It's at let's say it's at a mega chain.
At a mega chain? No, I don't say shit.
But you would at a small business? Mom pop
Fuck
shop?
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
At a mega corporation, they have their own, like, loss prevention fucking people. That's not my worry.
That's true, and they've got the cameras and stuff, so they should be looking out.
Right. That's not my fucking problem. At a mom and pop shop, though, not only would I probably tell, I would probably reprimand them publicly in front of everybody.
If it was a mega chain, I'd probably alert somebody, but, I'd just say, keep an eye on her or whatever, and then let them do the rest.
Right.
Yeah, I think I would do that too at a mega chain. Yeah.
But not at a mom and pop, because fucking Wesley hates moms and pops.
Yes.
It's 1923, and the sheriff in a central Florida town is protecting a suspect of a violent crime against an angry mob who wish to capture him. If the mob is frustrated, many buildings may be destroyed and people will be killed in ensuing riot. Should the sheriff deliver the individual to the mob? This is based on actual events in Rosewood, Florida, January 1st, 1923.
I mean...
Is there...
You risk extra deaths by the mob, or you hand him over and let mob rule.
I mean, the problem is, though, in my opinion, you guarantee that there's a death if you give them up to the mob. You aren't guaranteed that any deaths are going to happen if you don't give them up.
That's
like,
true.
You think it's a possibility, but you're guaranteed that blood will be on somebody's hands if you give this person up.
It's a tricky question because they are looking back with hindsight and they're telling you what did happen, but as the sheriff, you don't know that's going to happen.
Right. Well, exactly. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Like, if somebody could guarantee me that 100 people are going to die in said riot, then I'd make a different choice. But unless there's a guarantee, I don't see where the moral dilemma comes in at all.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you guys think of that one?
I agree. I really don't like mobs. I'm very against mobs. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of even peaceful protesting, because I think it gives people the opportunity to just do evil things and get away with it.
I hate mobs too, Brian. Believe me. You'd have to get that. Never mind. It's a bad reference. It's a Mormon thing. I would probably... I don't know. See, my thought is if I could try and, pacify the mob some other way, say, oh, well, the suspect or the criminal, has he been proven guilty, or
I believe so. Yes. He's a suspect of a violent crime.
just suspect? Oh,
Right.
well, because if I knew, they actually did it, I would have a public execution and pacify them. But
Holy shit!
whoa, what are you gonna do?
I don't want you to be my judge.
Right.
If he's
Okay.
guilty, might
Let's
as well
say-
string him up.
The sheriff is saying no, you can't have the dude. And then he sees the mob reacting poorly, and they start smashing buildings, and then one person dies, and then 2 people die, and then 3 people die, and you're like, holy shit, I gotta get control of this.
I'd turn him loose at 3 people.
I don't think that I turn him loose either way, because I think that you set a horrible precedent then. You know what I mean?
Like the United States saying we don't bargain for hostages.
Right, because like as soon as you bargain for one hostage, they're going to start taking more hostages because it makes financial sense. You know what I mean? I have a good moral dilemma for you guys. Okay.
Okay.
So, guy has already been acquitted of a murder, right? So he cannot be tried again, right?
Right.
Like because of double jeopardy laws. You know for a fact that he cannot be tried again and can never be found guilty of this crime again. You find evidence and you know unequivocally that this man is guilty. Do you fucking shoot him?
I don't
Like
own a
he's
gun.
never ever
Man.
going to get convicted for that crime. Justice will never be served ever. And you know that for a fact because of our laws and our system. Do you shoot him? And you know you're not going to get caught. You will never get caught for this crime.
I'm gonna say no.
Why?
Because I don't know if I could deal with the psychological damage that it would do to me. And so in killing him, justice may be served, but then I'm ruined too.
Yeah, like I don't feel
Fair.
comfortable with murder, and I'm not sure if I want to be a vigilante either.
The other thing is the people, like the judges are brought up into position. We're all in agreement that this is how it works, and this is how the system works, and this is how people can become judges. I didn't go through that process, and so I don't know if I would feel right suddenly putting myself in that position. I think that it's a position of a judge is better if it's if people are in agreement over it rather than one person just taking it into his hands, even if you do know that they were guilty.
Yeah,
I can change one sentence about this that makes my answer absolutely yes.
angry mob. That would be perfect.
Oh no, I was gonna say if like he did something to like my daughter or something like that, fuck yeah, I'm pulling the trigger every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he harmed or threatened to harm my family or something, I'd definitely pull the trigger. But if I found out that he was guilty, I wouldn't take it upon myself. I don't think I could live with that unless there was immediate danger to my loved one, or if it was like my daughter or something.
Right.
Throwing another monkey wrench in the works would be, can this guy be saved? And I don't just mean spiritually saved. I mean, I'm talking about, can he be, repent and be restored to normality and fit in with
I feel
society?
like you don't get to know that. I feel like that's part of the moral quandary is that that's a variable that you would never know.
I believe that murder.
But you'll know that you'll never get caught.
But I feel like never getting caught it's more about the consequences of the action and not necessarily about your feeling on how it would damage your psyche or anything like that. Like I wanted to know that you weren't going to pull the trigger because it morally felt wrong, not because you wanted to avoid prison.
I think I would. It depends. I'm sure it depends on what he did, but I think I wouldn't pull the trigger in the hopes that he could be turned,
Okay.
and also because I don't want to ruin myself.
Right.
This guy that you're talking about hypothetically is It's a murderer, I assume, or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't believe you said something before, and I forgot exactly what you said, but my reply to it is I don't think murderers deserve rehabilitation, and yeah, that's just my stance on that. So for me to pull the trigger on somebody just because I know that they're innocent or guilty and they got away with it, I would definitely go through some psychological damage, like Brian said, and I would want to be like helped throughout that if I were to do it, which is kind of contradictory because I don't believe that murderers deserve rehabilitation, but here I am doing some vigilante justice bullshit, and I want some rehabilitation.
Can I ask you how like what is your definition for murderer? Like, do you consider somebody that
Intense.
like let's talk about involuntary manslaughter. Like technically that would be a murder. You murdered somebody, you know what I mean? Like you killed them. That is what murder is, you know what I mean? Like does that count? Is that a murderer? Do they not deserve to be rehabilitated? You know what I mean?
Manslaughter is different. Like if you got into a conversation with someone and things got like overly violent and weapons were drawn and then you had killed them, then that would be manslaughter.
Right. Okay, so you're definitely like you're going by the legal definition of what murder is then.
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious.
There's a lot of variables, so
yeah,
you don't know what age they are. If they're a kid and they were driving recklessly and they do manslaughter, chances are they're either gonna hate themselves and go into depression, or they're never gonna speed again, and be super careful.
Like either way, you killed somebody, you're gonna feel like shit. Like
I also the other thing you could consider is, are they gonna kill again? And if they were gonna kill again, that would very heavily weigh on my decision.
See, like I don't think that. Like I said, the only reason that I took away the prison variable is because of the fact that I wanted to see what the moral answer is. But you would have no idea, you know what I mean? Like I think that's also an important thing to consider, like you said. And do you think that somebody that would just in cold blood murder somebody like that, do you think that they can be rehabilitated? Like, because that's part of the question, in my opinion.
And they don't deserve to be. They should just rot in jail and live off of our taxes.
Hello?
I don't know if they could be.
We hear you, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh,
and he's muted. Okay, well, Chris Hopkins just posted a message, so I think he's going to be on soon. Not Chris Hopkins. Good heavens.
John Hopkins, the musician.
Chris Coward.
When is Blake going to be on the podcast now that he's back?
So I'm going to advise you to try not to interrupt each other because it makes it hard in the Discord channel. It starts to get cluttered.
I agree. Like everybody could look at the text.
You just interrupted.
This is going pretty standard to CLC style.
No, it's not.
All right.
The old interrupting cow.
Hello, Chris. I wish your wife was just laying in bed listening to you like, what the hell is he doing out there?
She knows it's Monday. She already knows that any weird noises are to just be chalked up to jackassery.
I am the third revelation.
I have no idea.
Your dad's into some weird shit, kid.
Right? Oh, dude. She probably tells them things like, don't worry, guys. Once mommy finds a suitable father for you, you'll never have to deal with weird daddy again. Oh, man. I can only imagine what my son tells his teachers and shit. Like, yeah, my dad comes up and his eyes are red as hell, and he just says weird things and sings and, like, talks about Daniel Day-Lewis, and I don't even know who that is.
Oh, man. So I have another topic, and I'm going to argue the point that white privilege doesn't exist, at least in terms of being based on skin color.
Oh boy.
You ready for this?
Damn. It's a political topic.
It's a social topic. So,
Could I ask you to qualify something real quick? Do you mean in greater society, or when it comes to any situation at all?
In this example, I would say in terms of corporate stuff like getting a job.
Thank goodness
So,
I'm
like,
here.
we're not talking about the police or anything like that.
No, I'd have to give that more thought.
What about
Okay,
housing?
because I do agree with you if we're not going to include the police.
Yeah, I'd have to give that more thought.
Would housing be included?
I don't know anything about housing.
Okay, would education opportunities be included?
Not necessarily.
Okay, then tell us what
But
you're
but I
including.
but I but I do have a few opinions on that. But I might need more research to actually make my opinion valuable.
Yeah, exactly. You should tell us the
Well,
topics beforehand so we can do that.
Well,
why
that
don't you
wasn't.
guys let him set the premise for his argument?
So
Okay, go.
in terms of work, I would say in terms of work, um, I think that privilege is more based on social savvy and what's the term that's in D&D?
Charisma?
Charisma
Are you
privilege.
serious? You with the term in D&D?
I couldn't think of the word.
I was thinking about it. I was like, does he mean fucking charisma? No, he doesn't.
So
He meant chutzpah.
Yeah.
I think if you have a black person and a white person, and they have the same qualifications, I would say the black person could get a job if he knows how to interact with a white person. Let's say in this situation it's a white boss. He's hiring. The white person's doing the hiring. A black person could get in if he is socially savvy enough. He's got the charisma to do it, and if he understands kind of how to be familiar to a white person. He presents himself in a business suit. He fits into that world. Whereas a white person comes in with he's from the hood and he's got his bandana, his baggy pants or whatever. Let's just get super stereotypical here. He wouldn't be as inclined to get the job regardless of their skills and stuff because
White trash.
it's white trash. Vice versa, if a black person comes in, he's looking like a ghetto person, and he's talking really like in ebonics and stuff. He's just outside this white boss's world. The boss isn't going to be as inclined to hire him as a white person who's coming in and being formal business because he doesn't fit in as well. He's not as familiar, and so in both of those scenarios, it's not based on skin color. It's based on what the boss is looking for the job and how well they would interact with him and fit in with him on that level.
And how they compose themselves, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, ghetto was a fashion choice.
It seems like a lot of those identitarian types, and I'm not trying to say I'm not an identitarian because I'm sure we all identify as something at some point, But it seems like even the most extreme of the identitarians, like black separatists or white supremacists, like it seems like they all get it half right as far as like exposing the problem because they always look at it like, well, how come they, because of their physical trait, are allowed to do this? It shouldn't be like that, which is good right there. They should fucking stop right there. But then they go, we need to do the opposite way and we need to do it this way. So like, this group gets it. Now we need to make sure this group gets it. It's like, no, me, in my own opinion, I don't think like any sort of reverse oppression or something will do the trick. I think just no oppression, or no like suppression in whatever situation it is. Like, as far as physical traits, I think there's more to it as well as like even looking at statistics. Like, I think that's the wrong way to look at things where you're like, all right, well, how is it? Let's separate it by physical trait as opposed to like socioeconomic status or, like regional or poverty levels. Like, I think those are better ways of looking at stuff because one of my most favorite quotes by Thomas Sowell actually it was Jordan Peterson. He said there's more differences within a race than there is between races. So it's kind of like
Are you
that
able
makes
to
sense to me.
Are you able to take that and put it into an example situation?
Yeah, like you could say, like, oh, well, like this person comes, they're not even consider the area where he comes from, and you could say like, let me think about it. I try to set up a decent example. So instead of saying like this area is bad and the blacks have it bad because of this area, because they're now you're trying to argue like that, oh, they're held down or this because of their race color alone, but
Right.
when in reality you could look in an area and like realize like, well, it's not just like the black people that are experiencing poverty, or it's not just like the Mexicans that are experiencing poverty. It's actually this whole area that experiences poverty, and this whole area that lacks options. And so
Right.
instead of like being like, well, let's uh, accommodate them within the school systems as far as acceptance goes, specifically on a physical trait, instead of doing that, maybe we could do like, all right, so people from like poverty stricken Chicago will have like this much more of an advantage to get in or something. Even though I don't like it, I'm a fan of like basing everything off merit, but I know like I haven't like come around to fully embrace the fact that people are like at the mercy of their immediate society, but I still think they can have like input and change things within like certain levels. But I can see it and I can understand like people want to take steps to remedy it that way, but not with fucking, not on race alone, not on physical trait alone. That's kind of shitty to me. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess the thing that I struggle with, though, I don't feel like we're far enough removed that it's not that we're completely away from race being a factor. And that's only because especially in the South, we're not that far removed from Jim Crow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're not that far removed from segregation. And like, and things were definitely not separate but equal, like at all. Like, things were very unequal for the black community. And I feel like that stuff, even after we've tried to fix it, has already carried over and has created a disadvantage, because it's all about the wealth that you can, it's all about the familial wealth that you can pass down. And when you started from disadvantaged like that, because like, think about how many of probably people that are just talking right here right now, how many of us have some sort of familial wealth that they will get when their parents pass away. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to end up with debt when our parents die, most likely. I guess I don't know all of your situations, but you know what I mean? Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So
I
your
was-
argument is that like inheritance makes class more static?
Well, that's not the only thing, but I do feel like it plays a contribution for sure.
I see.
Or, I've seen a study that it only really lasts a couple generations. Like even your big ones, they still suffer like big valleys and stuff. They don't always stay on the up and up.
Well,
But
I'm not talking about like big money though, Chris. Like, I'm talking about just having life insurance so that you're getting, and I'm not saying that, black people don't have life insurance or whatever, but what I'm getting at is like having a home in an area where the home that you bought.
Uh-oh. I think my program froze up. Hold on.
Well, my father passed away in January, and he was a little bit older, and he was a physician, so he had some savings and a home and everything. He left to me and money to my siblings and stuff. And I'm 22, and I'm in a position that I don't think 95% of people my age would be in, unless their parent who passed away was wealthy, and he had a prestigious occupation. So
Well,
I definitely think class adds to that, and in some cases race.
Well, do you think also, though, that what might make you have an advantage for being financially responsible is that your father would have taught you these things? You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so, like,
Mhm.
when you've got a shit education system, and when you've got your parents that are living paycheck to paycheck, that looks normal to you. And so when you're struggling like that, that is normal. That becomes normal.
Mhm.
Whereas for a lot of us, I feel like that's not the case.
This leads into my scenario a little bit too, because I think that a lot of being socially savvy and charismatic comes and even knowing how the business world operates and how to act comes from experience or learning it from somebody else. And a lot of people, if you, for example, if you came from the ghetto or you came from poverty, you wouldn't let's say you wouldn't have learned that, so you're at the disadvantage there. So that could be considered a privilege. And it's not about the skin color; it's about the fact that you're where you were born and stuff.
Yeah, region.
Oh yeah.
And so I think the
sorry.
phrasing's wrong. Like people say white privilege, what they mean is in this scenario, in this specific case, would be the privilege of being born in a society that knows the majority run the businesses and they know how the rules operate and they've learned it all.
Well, something else, if you guys don't mind me continuing, something else I've noticed, at least in my little bubble of culture, is that it's not especially racially diverse. There's whites and some Latinos, but the real divisions in society are class, and there's not much mixture between the really wealthy, the not so wealthy, and poor. But I came from a family with a reasonable amount of money, and when I was applying for colleges, I had pretty good grades, good test scores, but I didn't get into a lot of big schools. And my dad was talking to me about what happened to him, was that a lot of times they'll look at your connections and look at, what's the word? I don't want to say who you rub shoulders with, but I feel like that still happens,
It's nepotism.
Yeah, if you run with a certain crowd, if say you have a neighbor or something that they're a dean at a college, you're going to be more likely to have those stepping stones towards better conditions. So I feel like there's levels to that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
I agree. You could say class, you could say culture. I think if I was going to
Socioeconomic status, man.
Yeah, I know. Like, who knows how many people who knows, maybe to get into that school, you had to know this person at this country club if you could get in or afford to get in. Like, you know what I mean? Like that.
And if I was going to apply to be a pastor at a black church, and I say a black church because I've been to one for a few years and I know how different they are. I wouldn't fit in. And it's not just to fit in as in it's awkward, but I mean, like, I wouldn't know how they operate their songs or their sermons or whatever. And so they'd be more inclined to choose a black person over me. So there's no white privilege there. I just don't understand their culture. I'm not used to it. I'm a foreigner in that case.
Right.
I hear you.
I see what a smaller example for what Brian's doing. Like over here, all like the Asian-owned businesses, they only hire Asian people. But this isn't the case as in like somebody else wouldn't be able to do their job. And in this case, like I think it's just like a lot of these people don't even know the language. It's more, I think it is maybe favoritism because a lot of these people are American born and they don't know Korean or some type of Chinese, but then they still hire them and then, like you usually don't see any. There's even like a bakery that's not even like an Asian bakery, but since like the owners are Asian, they only hire Asian people.
It seems like to me like it's not so much a question of what class you just happen to be born in. It's more so a question how easy it is to like mobilize between classes or among classes. Like that seems more like the big factor, like the deciding factor to me. And it seems to me like race should have little to nothing to do with it if we were going to like try to gear ourselves toward moving away from it. It seems like we could we could fix the problems a lot easier if we looked at it, with more of a factual basis. And then the only real like segregation that takes place on like on a big massive scale are the ones that have been like put into policy. Not saying I'm for it or totally against it. I lean to be against it, but like affirmative action, so long as we're separated in the books, we're always going to be separated, whether we like it or not, whether we hold hands on the outside or not. It's going to separate us by race right there.
Well, like, so we said that we weren't going to bring police into it, and I feel like that's actually unfair to not. Because if you're a felon, you're less likely to get hired. And fucking poor people, in general, tend to be felons more often. And also, on top of that, fucking, if you've been incarcerated at all, like if you have any sort of criminal record at all, so like let's talk about misdemeanors, let's talk about marijuana. White people and black people smoke marijuana at the same rates. Black people are arrested for marijuana at like 3 times the amount. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on there? And so, like, I think that if it is about race, it starts with police
on an individual.
You know what I mean?
I haven't done a ton of research, so I'm just gonna in this situation, let's say what you're saying is pretty factual. I think in that case, that would be a demonstration of what I said in a racist form. So, because the blacks seem they're more foreign to these people, they're not as inclined to be buddy with them, or perhaps they don't have. There's lesser chance for them to have connections like, oh, my father, or whatever.
Right.
There's inevitably, it's so much easier to arrest or do these negative responses to something that's more foreign to you, I think. Just speaking from a psychological perspective.
And I completely agree with that. I definitely think that it makes it a lot easier. And I mean, straight up, man, I didn't end up getting an underage drinking ticket because the guy that caught me was one of my dad's fucking friends from high school. You know what I mean? Like, straight up. That's the only
like
reason.
That. Spoiler alert for Black Mirror, but that Black Mirror episode where they're in the military and they have these like goggles on or whatever that make the people look like alien bug things so that it's easier to shoot them.
Yes.
Because you can't identify with them as well.
Go on.
I think it's a similar psychological thing. You're dealing with different appearances and skin color that's pretty drastic, and you're dealing with different culture that's very drastic, and you're dealing with different class and poverty levels. It's just like, I think it kind of spurs on, and it makes it easier to do that racist bias thing when you're arresting people.
What's crazy, man, is I never had a negative interaction with the police until I came to Milwaukee. Like, I mean, I've been arrested in Marinette, obviously, like that's just a thing that's happened. But the interaction has always been positive because, I have decorum and you know what I mean? Like, they don't treat you like shit if you treat them well, and I know them, whatever, no big deal. But like, I have a concealed carry permit here, and I have more than once had an officer unholster his pistol when I hand him both my ID and my fucking concealed carry permit, and then immediately place both hands back on the steering wheel and ask for instructions. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. And I couldn't imagine if all I ever had were bad interactions with the police. Like, what kind of attitude are you going to have when you deal with them? You know what I mean?
I agree, because, I've been stopped and frisked before just because, I'm brown, I'm Latino.
I don't think a single person here would say they agree with that. Like, I don't think a single person here is for stop and frisk.
Yeah, so, like, that has happened to me and, my friends and like, my cousins and stuff. But my cousins, they definitely look fucking intimidating and are definitely up to no good. But me, I look super innocent. Like, I wouldn't hurt a fucking fly. So like so I was like completely like shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like I already believe this, but this just like makes me believe it even more. And there was this one experience I had where my cousin and my friends, we were smoking weed, but like in like the woods at a park. And then, we came out and then we got into the car and then we're driving off. And then the cops stop us. And we know it's not because we were smoking weed, because if they saw us smoking weed, they would have stopped us when we were smoking weed. It was because we're 3 people of color getting into a shitty car. That was it. And then stop and frisk would even happen if you just have a shitty car. Because I've had other experience where me and my brother and my friends we were driving to go buy weed, and then we got stopped because we got profiled because we're in a shitty car. So yes,
She got stopped before instead of after, huh?
Yeah, I know. So yeah, we got stop and frisk. Like, that's crazy because they can't even stop you when you're in the fucking car. Thankfully, that doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, those were some bad times.
It's
But
it's
yeah,
a-
like I
had
said,
good interactions. Kind of.
the reason I was hesitant to bring police into it is because it's such a convoluted topic, because you see so many videos that are edited, and then you find out you watch the full one and you're like, okay, that's not that bad. But
like
there's
from
also a
my
lot of videos
experience, though,
and then you hear
I
stories
have
like Lozano's,
right.
Yeah.
Well, but what I've read though is that there are a few police departments, Las Vegas being one of them, and for when they implemented some fucking anti-bias training, it stopped it slowed down police shootings by like 50%. And in my opinion, if all it costs is some money to give some cops some training, like, I'm fucking down. Like, I don't understand if there are things that seem to be working, like, and it's not, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, okay, it's $1 million, like, but is that not worth it to save lives? You know what I mean? Like, the problem that I have is it seems like everybody's like, well, you just need to fucking listen to cops. And it's like, no, cops need to not fucking gun people down. And I realize that I'm getting off topic, but I think that, again, it comes back to the fact that when you're arrested more often, it's harder to find jobs, and maybe that leads to some of the discrimination that does exist, you know what I mean, when it comes to looking for employment. Because I know, for at the very least, people of the lowest economic status in this country, it's definitely a problem because they're the most arrested.
But
I hear
also,
that.
but also, you do have to actually like listen to what cops do, because one of those times where I did get stopped, like, I expressed to the police that that I am annoyed and this is a big inconvenience for me and everything, and they didn't really do anything because I didn't do it in a non-friendly manner. I was just like, so why the fuck? Like, I didn't say why the fuck. I was like, so why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand why you're doing this and why you're asking questions that don't even have to do with the law, or just like that are supposed to be like these mind game type of questions. Like, so why are you doing this? And I was just
No, like, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have to listen to the police, but like,
no, I know.
I guess what I'm getting at is if they can, because it is not the suspect's job to de-escalate the situation, in my
Yeah,
opinion. It is the police officer's job.
yeah. I'm just saying.
And like, but
it's
again, we come.
it's not a simple solution
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like that.
I'm just saying
Well,
that
no, I get that.
And if training worked, then
there is I'm
I'm
just
all
saying
for
that there
it.
is a way to tell the police that you're upset about what's happening right now that's super unfair without getting aggressive or violent or intimidating. Because I said,
I
No,
can-
and I
I
agree completely.
spoke my mind. I'm like, this is an inconvenience. I'm super upset that this is happening. Like, I got nothing, like all this shit, and they never like threw me on the floor, put handcuffs on me, or took a gun out or anything like that.
Well, I
And
guess what I'm getting at, though, is why are we not having more positive outreach by police officers at schools? Like, it starts with education, in my opinion, and we're not doing that. And so, again, that comes back to unequal opportunities.
well, over
I get what
here,
Tim and Brian is saying both, because like Tim saying, look at the statistics, and you could see, you know, the arrest rate, but I mean, there's a death rate too, and I don't want to look at it with those type of lenses, but I mean, whites do get killed more. And then with what you're talking about, as far as like the training and stuff, that I'm all for it, dude. If training fixes it, fuck yeah, let them have it. And then as far as education in schools, when it comes to cops, the first thing we should probably do is, I mean, granted, I totally agree. There is an authority problem. They totally need to be reined in. But the last thing we need to be doing is preaching that we can't like trust them and fuck the cops. You know, we definitely don't need to inject any kind of fabricated animosity. And then I can see what Brian's saying, because there is like things that led me to even believe like, holy shit, man, maybe like, you know, racism exists even on like a departmental level, which is can be totally true, and I'll be totally against it. But there's that one video in Texas that showed the white kid walking down the street with like an AR, and the cop stopped him, and the kid was like, yeah, get lost, whatever, you know, and like the cop left him alone. Then they had a black kid walking down the street, and like the whole department like had him lay on the ground and everything. But then
that's crazy.
yeah, I don't know how true this is, but then come to find out, they said they called the department and told them they were like filming shit with the white kid, and then with the black kid, they didn't. And then they let somebody else call and like report it. Like, there's some kid walking around crazy with a gun. And so it was like
Right.
actually two different situations, you know, but they televised it as something totally different to inject more fabricated animosity, just like now this and all those, you know, like
But I
fucking,
guess
you could tell they're
So
like
Tim,
fucking at your emotions.
we were talking about education, about cops in schools. Over here in New York City, the school guards, the school officers, they're actually NYPD. Is it like that in where you guys are from? That those school
Yeah.
guards, yeah.
Yeah.
And
In
then
Colorado, it's the same way.
so yeah, for me it's like that, and and the school guards tend to be black, and they tend to have good relationships with the students. From what I noticed, like the students always talk to them and whatever, and like look up to them and really respect them. Where in every school that I went to, elementary school, middle school, and high school, they were always black, or more than one black officer, and you know, the kids like
clearly I
really
have
love
no idea
them.
what I'm talking about.
They really love them, and it's like that for most of New York City, I believe.
Well,
And
that
Yeah.
is what Tim's talking about. That we need more of that. I think that sounds
Yeah.
really good
yeah,
because you're naturally going to be less fearful of that which you're familiar with. And so if there was connection between the cops and the students, especially if they were of different race, there's familiarity there. There's going to be less inclination to be hostile.
Because
however,
like there are precincts that police individual neighborhoods, and I see no reason why, if we have all of this fucking money that we're spending on basically everything, why can't we set some aside so that we can have, you know, neighborhood meetups so that people can know who the fuck these people are, and you know what I mean? Like that will help shit. That will help shit a lot. It will.
Yeah.
Like
Sounds
it
really
can't
good.
not.
You would be even a white officer would be way less inclined to shoot a black person if had a personal relationship with that black person.
Right, knows that
Yeah.
person by name.
Yeah.
They did that in my hometown actually, like every 4th of July, every like a big holiday, like 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, they would have big cookouts at like the firehouse, and all like the sheriff's department would go there and everything, try to meet like, you know, all the people living there.
so full disclosure though, all of my schools are in Bayside, Queens, that I went to, my elementary, my middle school, my high school. So it's a small sample size. It could just be just Queens. It could just be my neighborhood. But I'm just going to assume that like every school in New York City does have a person appointed by the NYPD there though. But I'm just saying like these relationships, who knows if it's like that at other schools. There could be like an asshole, or the moderator, there could be assholes. Who knows? But for me, the students always had a good relationship with them. However, there was no workshop like Tim is suggesting. There was no workshops like that. And I feel like there should be. And Like for
I mean, I
like
want it to just be a picnic, man. Like, I don't even want it to be a workshop. Like,
I feel you. But even
I want families to get together and eat some food, and you know what I mean. Like,
oh yeah.
I want these cops to have their kids play. Well, like one of the things that Milwaukee has been trying to do is they've been trying to make a rule that you have to live in Milwaukee County in order to work for Milwaukee County, and like a lot of people are really upset about it. But like, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense
Yeah.
that if you're going to be a police officer or a firefighter or something like that, like, you should live in that
The
neighborhood or
community.
near.
You should be a
Right.
member of the community and work for the community. I truly feel that. It's just weird to me because in like elementary school, like we had like an assembly, and then like people from like the firehouse would come, but we never got the same thing for the police. And despite the fact that there are people from the NYPD in all the public schools in New York City that students have good relationships with, like there's still a really big distrust of the police despite that.
What a messy topic. Why did I decide to do that?
What have you
Anybody else
done?
got anybody else got anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I actually had a topic, and I do not want to debate religion, but what I do want to ask is just about like what God is to those of you that believe in it. Because like, I don't know, I don't believe in God, and like I'm always curious like what that means to people that do. Again, I do not want to debate this at all, and so if you're an
So
atheist,
it's not a existence or not existence. It's just in
yeah,
your
like I want
belief.
to
What
know
does it mean?
what God means to you, like how God affects your life, and like, you know what I
Gotcha.
mean? Like I just want to know just in general, because like I've noted, I know for a fact that for people that it's important to, it's something that is a meaningful aspect of their life. And so I'm just curious because I know for Wesley that is true, but I'm not sure about the rest of you. So
Gotcha. Who wants to jump in first?
I'll go, I guess.
Okay.
What God is to me, basically, is my acknowledgement of a higher power greater than myself. Because my whole theory is that there is no such thing as big or small. Like on, if you know, step back far enough, there is no like big or small. Like the neuron is as big as whatever is microscopic to it, or we could be a makeup in a brick wall or something. I think there's no such thing as big or small, but I only acknowledge the fact that there could be something that exists that's greater than ourselves. And so that's all I like to acknowledge. I don't ever want to like say that there couldn't be anything that exists that's greater than myself.
So in believing that, what impact does it have in the way that you live, if any?
Like, I mean, I could sound corny, but this is my own personal belief. But I think like gut instinct or your conscience or just like like feeling down or your inner emotion stuff could be like kind of indicative of that. But that's just to me, like maybe those people that lack those like, hey man, I feel really bad about doing that. Maybe those people that lack that like, that wrenching like pull on their
Like
gut,
a sociopath or something?
yeah, it could be like they've strayed from, like you could throw Christianity on it and say like they've strayed from God or strayed from the light, or you could apply any religion to it and say they've strayed from it. But my own thing is like acknowledge it and then like accommodate that feeling too. Like if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But that's
Okay.
kind of
Okay, then I'm going to throw this at you. What about a person who has a guilty conscience about something in their teenage years and then they grow up and they realize it's not that big of a deal? Like, let's take cussing. Cussing, they've been taught that cussing is wrong. They get into their 20s and they learn that cussing is is more complicated than that, and it's not what they thought it was. It's not just a moral dilemma. It's just taboo in society, or if you go to another country, they don't care.
I
Like,
guess
then their
something like
guilty
that would
conscience may go away.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But like maybe something with that would be like your level of reconciliation. Like if it's something that minor that could be reconciled with just like mere thought, like okay, what I was doing wasn't that bad, like in comparison, and it obviously wasn't that bad. But if it's something that really you can't reconcile it, even like telling yourself in your head like no matter which way I try to make myself believe, I still killed this fucking person. So I could say anything I want in my head to try and reconcile it. It's still, I don't know. I don't fucking know. You're gonna throw me on one of those thought loops, dude. I'm gonna have to hang up.
Okay,
Go call
so
Graham.
Lozano stepped away for a sec, so we just got to catch him up. We're talking about spiritual beliefs, but not whether or not God exists. More like how does your personal beliefs impact the way that you live, right?
Like specifically, if you believe in a higher power. If you're an atheist, don't really need to get into it because
I ain't got no time for that. I don't got no time for anything that is not certain. I don't got no time for fucking higher power. I don't got no time for fucking supernatural shit. I ain't got no time for conspiracy theories. Hey, bitch.
Okay, you want to mute Michael? You want to mute Michael, Brian, please?
Oh no, like I don't know. That shit just makes me go crazy. I can't have those thoughts in my head. Like I already know that when I do that, it affects me negatively. So I would rather not even think about those things.
Okay, well
All right.
then you might want to hang up for a bit because we have 2 more people to go through.
No,
We're about to get all negative up in this bitch.
no, but it's okay because the one about higher powers and God and whatever affects me the least. So yeah.
Nice.
Leslie,
So,
would you like
Chris,
to go next? Oh,
hold
sorry.
up.
Go
I
ahead,
want to
Chris.
talk. I want to talk to Chris some more. So,
I want to talk to Chris some more.
personally, like you're saying that if they have these guilty feelings about it or whatever, then that condemns them, or how does that work?
No, it's to be honest, like this
if they
is
feel guilty, then they are guilty.
no, like, all right, of course, this is some bullshit like within myself that I haven't like fully fleshed out yet, but that's something like I have been like toying with the thought of like, well, maybe if these people fucking, like lack that gut feeling, that conscience, like, hey man, fucking breaking into the store is like, wrong and not because of consequence, not like necessarily because of consequence, like I'm in a situation where I could go to jail, but more so like, damn, I'm gonna fuck this guy over, like maybe that could be like your,
Interesting.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
do you think about that in terms of your own life and your own decisions? Does that affect how you operate?
Yeah, because like I'm a huge believer that like the majority of what you manifest like comes from within yourself primarily. So like, if like I walk around all day like, fuck, dude, I'm never gonna get a better job and everything's shitty and I'm never gonna go anywhere or nothing. Instead of just, and I'm not saying like, oh, anybody can do it. I'm not saying like, oh, bootstrap your way out of South Chicago or something. I'm just saying like, as far as me, if I walked around all day thinking like, fuck it, one day I'm gonna be a comedian, damn it, and like just walked around like, fucking, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. The more like you repeat it, the more like you believe in it, the more you'll start like gearing yourself toward it and trying to do it, and at least setting goals for yourself and shit. And I think that like a lot
So
of
there's a
that,
little
Yeah,
bit of
I believe
there's a
that.
little bit of power of positive thinking in there.
I believe
yeah,
that to an
like
extent.
manifest destiny.
Like I saw this TED talk, and that was basically its whole point. But it summed up its point as fake it until you become it.
I definitely believe in that. Like 100% believe in that, dude. When I was when I first got started in construction, they needed somebody to start welding, right? And I had taken 1 semester of welding when I was in high school.
Oh my
And I was like, yeah, man, fuck it. I'll do that shit. And I eventually got really good at it. And you know what I mean? Like I can passably weld just about anything at this point.
When you immerse yourself in something,
Yeah.
you inevitably are going to get better at. I had to fake being a manager for a while at the hotel until I learned more about it.
Yeah, and
I'm
not
currently
fake it.
faking being a manager.
Not fake it till you make it though. Fake it till you make it's different because fake it till you become it. Like I hope you guys know the difference. Like
Yes.
okay.
And
The
then
difference
there's
between getting the role versus actually being the role.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
fake it till you make it
Correct.
is just like is basically doing like the bare minimum. It's just like okay, like now that I made it, like I don't got to do that no more.
Right.
I don't feel
Okay.
like that's what it means at all.
I would think fake it till you make it is like I'm gonna pretend to be this whatever, and then they give me the job, and I'm like I'm in.
Exactly.
Whereas versus become it would be like, no, you actually know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Fake
yeah.
it till
See,
you
and then
become it. It's
it's
just like I'm
not
gonna
just
succeed in
experience.
being it.
Because like somebody, not everybody would do exactly what Tim did in Tim's situation. You know, like there would be some people that would be like, motherfucker, they want me to weld, dude. God damn it, I don't want to fucking weld. You know, there
Word.
could be
Well,
anything.
you should know that they offered to pay me $5 more an hour if I was going to weld. So it was directly
Yeah.
in my benefit.
Well, yeah. Like why wouldn't you do it? Like
There
I'll
could
be
still be those people like, this is a summer job. Fuck no, dude. I don't want that kind of responsibility. There's tons of people like that too.
But like when I was a janitor, the building managers, they always just tell me to go do something. I'm like, I don't know how to do this, so I'm gonna go do it. Then they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing? You're not doing a good job." I was like, "Well, I don't know. Well, no one trained me on how to do this, but I'm not just gonna say no." Like,
So Wesley, what is God to you, and how does that being affect your life personally?
Well, you and I have talked about it a little bit. I think um, uh, I find that my belief in God is very comforting to me at times, and quite often. And God in my life, it's about having a moral compass, and obviously, I don't mean like if you don't have God, you can't be moral. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
You don't need to justify yourself, Wesley. Please just explain what you're trying to explain.
I don't know. I don't know. It's easy to think about life and think, well, if I do this, if I follow the rules, if I try my best, if I'm a good person, the worst that can happen is that I die and I stop existing. But I believe that, if you're a good person, you're rewarded in the afterlife. And Mormonism has a big influence on family, and we believe you're with your family in heaven, and that really shapes not just my own personal being, but my whole social structure. And so there's the orthodoxy and of it in my everyday life, but it's also just very comforting. And sometimes I get discouraged, and I have bad nerves, pretty bad anxiety, and I find that my faith definitely helps comfort me when I have problems. I don't. It's
Do you believe that there has ever been a time where like the Holy Spirit has directly helped you with something? Like, again, I hope that that's not like a condescending question, because I don't mean
no,
it to be.
no,
He lent me
not at
$5
all.
one time.
Shit.
oh my god.
I don't think I've had any like hand of God like experience or anything like that, or the Holy Spirit like um changing something in my life. But I definitely believe that I have been comforted by the Holy Spirit at difficult times in my life, just in my own emotional self. I feel that I felt something, if that makes sense.
I think that
Um,
counts.
That's cool.
Yeah.
but yeah, so
Yeah. For me, nothing really compels me to believe in God. So I don't. Nothing really compels me to believe in the devil or Satan or hell either. Even though I would love for bad people to be punished beyond this, but I'm just like, what's really the chances of that happening? And also, I kind of like just isn't like taking comfort in knowing that you're a good person and doing good things like enough. Like, do you really have to go to heaven? Why can't you just be happy with doing that right now? I'm not saying that there's motivation because heaven exists, but maybe for some people that is the motivation to go to heaven. So they
Well,
want to be a victim.
isn't that a fucking what's his face? It's a famous philosopher that said that you should believe in God just in case, because wouldn't it be better to err on the side of caution?
Oh, I agree with that to an
Was it
extent.
Nietzsche?
No, it wasn't Nietzsche. It was Wesley. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't. I'm afraid.
Like the deathbed fucking
Bristle.
I don't know. An agnostic approach to anything that humans can't be certain of is, I guess, a good stance. But why?
Right, well, I get that, and
Pascal's wager. It's Pascal's wager.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh. I think being moral for morality's sake, because it's the right thing to do, I think that's correct. I don't think you should be moral or, in a Christian sense, follow the commandments because you're afraid of being punished, but because it's the right thing to do inherently.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I want to say mine.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I'm curious to hear it.
I think I don't want to get too in depth into the timeline of the Bible, but I'll just jump in the days of Jesus. In the days of Jesus, I think he basically said all the laws that you've been living by are summed up in this: love God and love people. And I think it's so much more convenient to live that way, because there are, especially when you're trying to sort out morality, it's too easy to become to get down this rabbit hole of do's and don'ts and try to figure out what's right, what's wrong. And what that leads to is too many people tend to say, if you want to be a Christian, live this way, don't live that way. And I think Jesus came along and said, no, it's just, you just love people. And the reason why that's important to distinguish the two is because sometimes I think loving people looks different and acts different than just having a set of rules. So I mentioned earlier, I didn't cuss in front of my people at the hotel and they felt awkward because of it. It almost would have been better for them and more comfortable for them to be around me if I was comfortable with cussing, because then they could feel like they were being themselves and not be judged. Versus if I were to go to my family reunion with my uncle who was a Baptist preacher and I were cussing up a storm, it would make him uncomfortable. I don't think that would be a loving thing for me to do and put a loving position for me to put him into. That'd be awkward.
So is that why you told me I'm not invited to that, Brian?
Look, man, there's a lot of reasons you're not invited to that. The way that it's impacted my life, that's the moral aspect. But what it does for me is it motivates me to be loving to people, both for them and also for myself. I think that I used to get really bogged down with the world's problems and almost depressed because of it, because I thought everybody's starving and I can't do shit about it. And God says, people say God isn't good because he lets people starve. And then the Christians come along and say, no, God wants you to go feed the people. And I think I can't feed all the people. I'd get overwhelmed and frustrated.
In the arms of the angel. Oh wait, no, that's the dog one, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's the animals.
Anyway,
the conclusion I came to is that I can only do what I can do, what I'm capable of. So maybe I can't feed all the people in the world, but I can brighten someone's day. I can be nice. I can try, if somebody comes in and there's a customer and he's having a shitty experience, I can say, do what I can to give them a positive experience. And just because they're pissing me off doesn't mean I need to retaliate or whatever. So
Right.
there's, if you frame things in love, I think that you can come up with a morality that's flexible enough to be beneficial to multiple different people in multiple different situations. And so we get into this thing that Wesley was talking about. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Well, I have a quick question.
Go for it.
So, is God love then? Because you still haven't really defined to me what God is to you. You know what I mean? So, like, is God love? Like, is that like what
Yes,
is
and I
inside
used
us? Or
I'd say yes, and I use Jesus as a model. So not that you have to be Jesus. I don't go around as Hobo Brian, homeless, and heal people because I don't think I have that level of faith. I don't know if that's even what the Lord has called me to do. But I can have the characteristics and attributes of Jesus. I can see that he cared about people, and actually, really, in terms of the Pharisees at the time, Jesus didn't really follow the law that they believed in. He actually called them out on their hypocrisy, and he was their enemy. And so you could argue that Jesus, by their standards, was probably potentially a sinner, but then you look at him in the terms of what he, the way that he said God has laid everything out. This is how things are supposed to be, and he did it right. And the Pharisees were actually the ones in the wrong. So
That's
so the attributes and the characteristics of Jesus, that he was patient, that he was kind, that he was loving, that he cared about these people, that he was self-sacrificing for others. Like you can replicate that in any sort of scenarios in your life in any situations.
yeah. So, do all of you believe in God?
Half of us, it seems. I like that, Brian. That's a good way of putting it. That was a pretty easy way of buttoning it up too. Like approach every situation with love, as opposed to retaliation or vengeance or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad, dude. It's not a bad philosophy or
The
way to look at it at all.
the hard things I've run into is the dilemma of and this is could apply to Michael. Can a person be gay and a Christian? And that a lot of conservative, old-fashioned Christians would say no because the Bible says don't be gay. If a person came up and asked me that, I'd be like, I don't give a fuck. Like,
But he be loving dude, so he still be loving.
maybe, yeah. That's why I'm saying I don't know. Like, I don't want to be. I'm not the judge and the decider. I don't want to be the one to sort that out. If a person came to me and said, "Can I be gay?" I'd be like, "Go learn about Jesus," and try to
Oh
model
my
your life
god.
after him. If
Yeah.
if then you feel some sort of calling from the Lord that He can help change you, or He wants you to even change, or even cares, that's for you to figure out. But I'm not going to be the one that condemns you. I don't have
I
that
hear
kind
you.
of power.
You don't want to impose yourself or your beliefs on somebody else. I
Mm-hmm.
like that, dude.
No, and what if I'm wrong? Like,
Mhm.
So, I was talking to somebody else about God and like basically higher powers and stuff, and I told them what I told you guys. Nothing compels me to believe in God. And then they threw a question back to me: so what would compel me to believe in God? And I don't quite have an answer for that. But for those of you that don't believe in God, I'm asking you this question now: what would compel you to believe in God?
what would compel me to believe in God? I mean,
Magic.
I would need something. I would need some sort of direct evidence. I think. You know what I mean? Like there would have to be there would have to be a hand of God situation. Like it wouldn't necessarily matter if everybody else knew it was true. Like realistically, if I had a strong enough trip, I might. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have necessarily have to be a drug induced one, but like
Mm-hmm.
if I was in an accident and you get all of that DMT that starts to run through your brain and stuff, it is possible that I could come out of a situation like that and believe in a higher power. But
Definitely.
I believe without some sort of a hand of God situation, it is absolutely impossible
Yeah.
for me to ever. But the reason that I actually asked the question is because I do have children. And, my parents are always wondering how we're going to raise them and things like that. And
Hmm.
I don't have a problem with raising them to be Christians or really any major religion, because the core tenets of the majority of religions are really fantastic. You know what I mean? Like, and I can get behind them. It's just
Yeah.
some of the ritual that I'm not necessarily down with.
I'll throw in a couple more things. One is I don't go to church, and I actually don't necessarily like Christian traditions and rituals, and I don't have a lot of use for them. And partly is because I think that they've gone too far off the rails. Another is, and sometimes they're cheesy, and I can't take them seriously. Another thing is, one of the reasons why I've chosen this route, even though I don't know the answer, I don't have an answer. I just believe it, but I can't prove it. And likewise, I can't prove or disprove any other beliefs or religions out there, so I have to just choose one. The reason I've chosen this one is largely because I can't find fault in it yet. I can see only good coming from it, and I see benefits for myself, and I've seen evidence of it. I've seen people changed from bad to good. I've seen them from being selfish to being helping kids, So if I saw that it was going to take me down the path of a lot of the conservative Christians that you see in stereotypes and news and stuff, where they're just they're saying hateful things towards gay people, or they are promoting the gospel of prosperity gospel, and they're ripping people off and all this stuff. That's evil. I don't want anything to do with that. And for a while there, in the early 2000s, I actually disassociated myself from Christianity and from churches because of their bad reputation that they had in the media. And I thought, I'm a follower of Christ, but I don't want to call myself a Christian because that paints me in a bad light. So as long as I can see good coming from it, I don't really see a reason not to pursue it.
For sure. Something that helps
Once
too
you've
is sucking all
rebuked him,
the.
Brian.
Oh my god.
You just suck all the comic book out of it and approach them as ideologies as opposed to like, religious people or religion. And you just say to yourself, you can believe that until you try to force somebody else to believe it too. And then we have a problem. That's it. Like cut and dry there. I like the way you put it. Don't impose it on anybody else and we're cool. Go believe in unicorns.
Well, like, what do you guys think about the fact that Christianity does say in the Bible that you're supposed to, evangelize?
A what?
But is it by force?
You know what the fuck that
Well,
means?
no, I mean not by force, but I mean technically, some people consider it to be incredibly annoying to constantly have. You know what I mean? Like, I was just
That's why you
curious
put
what
Are
you
you-
guys
up
think
I'm
about
sorry.
evangelization
Hold
in
up.
general.
Hold up. I'm sorry. The Bible says to do what?
To evangelize,
Evangelism.
Is
That
it?
means spread the word
Does
of
it
God.
say, or what does it say?
Yeah,
about
spread the word of
evangelizing? I
God.
don't really.
Well, here's what I have to say. We're on a podcast talking about it, and I told you what I thought.
You tricked us, you son of a
I don't
gun.
feel. I've gone through this multiple times. I don't have to go door to door. The conversation popped up at the hotel one day in the lobby, and I told them what I thought. And people have remarked on the way that I've lived. They say, you seem to care about people, and like, I don't think it would be loving for me to go door to door and annoy people.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't fit within my ideology.
Well, I was
Hey,
curious to hear what Wesley thought about it.
Okay, Weston.
Sorry.
Well, I think that I think it's okay to evangelize. I think it should be encouraged sometimes if it's something you personally feel strongly about. But I think sometimes you can go a little too far with it and get too preachy and be insensitive to different ideas.
I think I should mention that I do love when people evangelize to me because I'm just interested in different cultures and religions, but that's beside the point. Go ahead, Wesley.
Well, Mormons are famous for it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I didn't go on a mission because I have a personal, what's the word, disagreement with how the missionaries are supposed to conduct themselves. I think the training for missionaries is insufficient. you get these teenagers fresh out of high school with a rudimentary
No.
understanding of the theology at best. And I don't know. I've seen things go awry with it, but I'm getting into the weeds. I think it should be done with caution and with respect in mind. The concept of crusading, preaching the word and making it your mission. Oh boy. I don't know. I disagree with it being super preachy.
My youth group had one, and I went 3 years in a row out of a sense of it's the right thing to do. And we would go in the streets of Seattle or Oregon or wherever we were, and we would just talk to people. And at the time, I agree with Wesley that I didn't know very much. I don't feel like I had a good understanding of my own faith. And here I was trying to broadcast it out to people. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, I thought, I'll never see these people again. Like, here I am telling them, I love you, man. Jesus loves you, man. And they're like, who the fuck are you? Like, I don't, you don't love me, you know?
I don't feel like proof of God's existence would be convincing to me. Like, would convince me. Because I want to know what God is about. I'm like, okay, you exist. So now that you exist, like, what's true and what's not, and what the fuck do we not know? Like, is this true what they say, like, about the heaven and hell bullshit? Like, I want to know, like, what God is about before, like.
But honestly, like, I guess, though,
believing in the existence of God, and so I guess yes, if there was evidence that God existed, and of course I can't deny that God doesn't exist, but to put your beliefs into God and to worship God, that I would have to know more and probably go on one of those fucking psychedelic religious episodes that you described, Chris and Tim.
What if the heavens opened up, and I mean, like, hosts of angels came down from the sky, and
and Alanis
God.
Morissette.
Oh my God, I would actually be scared at first, yes.
But
what if you just happen to get a job when you lose
let's
one?
Go. Hold up.
Okay, I want to. This is gonna be. I want to paint Wesley's picture a little better. The heavens open up, and down comes Stephen Hawking and Harambe.
Okay, Wes, can you please continue, Wes?
I'm just saying, if it became, totally apparent to you that God, our society's idea of an omnipotent God was real, and it manifested itself on earth, what would you do?
Well, I already know that I'm a good person, so I wouldn't really have to change anything, like, because I guess I would be confident that I'm going into heaven, so I would just be like, okay, I wouldn't just try to be better.
Haven't you seen the signs, Michael? You are definitely not going to heaven.
Oh, yeah. Like, no, I'm definitely gonna be in purgatory first, at worst limbo, but I'm not gonna go to hell. Like,
I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of signs that say you are.
Billboards.
Oh my God. If that were to happen,
that's still technically a sign.
No,
those ones out in front of the church lawn that people make memes about.
Oh, dude, my least favorite one though is the one of the fucking aborted fetus that my daughter sees on a regular basis, and it's like, motherfuckers, what are you doing? This is no, bruh. This shit ain't cool. Like, I respect their right to do it, but man, I'm upset about it. It's not cool. But I would also be upset if there was a dildo on. You know what I mean? Like, I also don't want to go the other way, so.
Word.
Fuck it.
It sucks that it has to be one way or the other, huh? Like, well, you have to choose a dildo or a dead.
So in January, I thought I did get a sign from God, but I brushed it off as a coincidence. I believe it's a coincidence. But in late February, my parents were going through separation, and then one day my dad just randomly decided to just leave before my mom even came home. He packed up all his things, and then he called me and my brother down, and he says, I'm leaving right now. And then the next day, when I was going to school, there's a Jehovah's Witness center like 2 blocks away from me, and I pass it like every day for like my whole life to get to like the bus and like the main streets and whatever. So I was passing it that morning, and then one of them came out, and then they handed me a pamphlet, and you know, I just like, yeah, thank you. I put it, and then before I put it in my bag, I read it, and the pamphlet says, "What is the key to happy family life?" And I had an emotional response to it because, you know, it was relevant. It was the context and everything. It was such a huge coincidence. And, you know, like, I was just like, well, fuck, this sucks.
Is that the major difference between an atheist and a believer?
What's the difference?
Where an atheist would see coincidence, somebody who believes might find meaning. You know what I mean?
I don't know. What if God's up
I don't
in
know.
heaven?
I don't know.
"Damn it, he didn't invite again."
For me, it's just like, for me, it was just like,
on
I was just like,
what
for
do
me,
I gotta do here?
other than it,
Like, no, I'm not trying to be condescending or anything. I'm asking
No, I
questions
know.
because it's not something that, again, makes any sense to me, and so I'm
No,
curious.
I totally
You know what I
understand.
mean?
I kept the pamphlet, by the way, and I don't know. For me, it was like more than just the coincidences. It's like, would a sign of God actually make me feel like shit, like it is right now, as well? So yeah,
I'm gonna say no, because there have been a number of times where I took something as a sign and it turned out to be a disaster.
yeah. Or a sign from God that will make you feel like shit is probably if you are a bad person and God is telling you that shit. But in this case, I know I'm not a bad person. I guess if I don't know if the 7 deadly sins apply, but definitely sloth is one of mine. And I don't know if God will punish anybody for that, but other than that, I'm a pretty good person. Like,
What if it's in how you look at it though? Like say for instance me, when I got like forced to go back into another trade and I was all trained up to get my license and everything in that trade, but I didn't because I went into a different trade. But like I got forced back into that and I had to go get my license and I was praying to every single God that weekend because it was like all in the matter of a weekend. But what if it isn't so much like, you know, the coincidence in itself, like, oh, that means God exists, but more so like the strength that you have within yourself to get through that, you know, or like to be like, oh man, I know like a lot of that should be written off to the individual and stuff, but what if it is like, you know, like shit within yourself too, like, oh man, I know I'm gonna get through this. I know like things are gonna happen, like it's gonna be better, like something that aided my mentality other than myself. I don't know.
That's like a combination of your power of positive thinking you mentioned earlier and Wesley's comfort. Like it is helpful to have, if you're feeling down and out or everything's gone to shit, and if you feel like praying is gonna help you get through it, there's definitely it inspires hope in you and you're gonna be motivated to press on instead of just getting depressed and saying, fuck this, I quit.
That makes sense.
well, I guess another way to do that would just be for everybody to ask the question about what do you value and what are your goals in life. Goals are mainly short term. They're meant to be met and then you go on to the next goal. But a value is something that spans across your whole life and all your decisions and choices and everything. So I feel like maybe those since it's more about yourself. Like I feel like those should be motivating factors than just like God being one. I don't know.
Guys, I have something really important to tell you. I legally changed my name to Tom DeWeese.
I don't get the reference.
Wait, hold up.
Look out,
Wait, what happens to Tom DeWeese?
Oh,
Highlander.
Does he now?
You've seen it.
I
is Mario Luigi Mario.
what is the reference?
He's
What
a
do you
dude
mean?
in our group that has his own podcast as well, right?
Tom DeWeese has a podcast?
Who are
I
you?
don't
Yeah,
think he
he's
does.
part of another podcast. It's like the Geek something.
Oh.
I don't know her.
Tom
Okay.
DeWeese is the manager of the hotel or whatever.
Oh,
I
well,
didn't-
there's a Tom DeWeese in our group, isn't there?
That's who I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's the one I'm referencing.
Okay.
Dude, we got to get him on the show. I didn't know he had his own podcast.
I believe so. It's like, I can't remember. Damn it. It's like the Dork something or the Geek something.
That's rad.
Hmm.
I'm going to talk to him.
It's him and a couple other guys. I think they're like Nick Utley's buddies or something.
Oh, Nork Butley.
So are we still
They
talking
make
about this
Voltron.
existential bullshit? Or are we gonna?
You got?
We're talking about Nork Butley.
Do you have anything else to say about the existential bullshit? Because otherwise I might close off the podcast.
Loving you is because
I like Tim's view on it as well, because that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I have like my sister-in-law. She's like really Catholic, and her whole family, which is awesome. And then, like I grew up like on and off Christian. Like we would frequent church a lot, and then we wouldn't, but I was still always like, I guess, Orthodox Christian. My wife was too, and like I was never baptized. My wife was. My daughter hasn't been yet, and we've been debating it as well. Like fucking, maybe we should go, get everybody baptized.
I was baptized. I did confession. I did communion. I was raised Catholic. Sunday school fucking sucked. But then, like with my friend when I was young, I would go to his church on Sundays sometimes, because he's Christian. And, oh my goodness, Christian churches. I don't know if it was just my experience or all Christian churches are like this, but they try to be so fucking family and kid friendly. They try to make that shit all fun and whatever. They got that vacation and Bible school bullshit and all
you
that.
guys got a water slide, motherfucker?
And then like,
Nah, the Sundays are fucking lit, bro. You gotta
Oh
go
my
to a
God.
Pentecostal church.
and then
better
and then we went on a retreat to go apple picking and shit. And I was like, but then Catholic church is like, nope, it's all gonna be old school. Like just mass isn't going to be this huge fun like collective this thing. It's gonna be like you're all here, but you're all having your own individual like thing until we tell y'all to shake hands. Like at the end, and then
What are you guys touching over there? Knock it
and then send your kids off to Sunday school so they could be miserable that they're in an education establishment on a fucking Sunday. Like, yeah. So I got to experience like both. I didn't get to experience anything else. Like,
Bro, Veggie Tales is good. Don't even talk shit.
oh, VeggieTales. Oh yes, VeggieTales is what's up. Like.
That's all we did for Sunday school for years.
Wow, what lazy teachers.
Turn on
Word.
VeggieTales. Let's go smoke cigarettes.
It got y'all
We didn't have a
engaged.
teacher. There was just like a lady that was down there that just fucking turned on Veggie Tales when we would just chillax and watch that shit.
Yeah, just like, oh, we're just gonna turn on VeggieTales, and there's a potluck upstairs, and if you guys want to go get,
I'll be in the
I was
den
like, I don't
playing
know,
Dr.
the
Mario.
Christian versus Catholic is so fucking dramatic. I'm just like, we ain't got no fucking potluck. None of these families touch each other. We go the fuck home. Like,
Dr. Mario.
You know what we did have instead of a real rigorous Sunday school is what we had what was called CCD, which is on Wednesday fucking night for 3 hours, bro. And that was
That's
all so
really
that I could learn how to be a good ass fucking Catholic.
Wes, what,
Those youth
Every
groups were
Sunday.
lit, though.
Every Sunday morning, Mormon church is a 3-hour thing, 3 1-hour meetings back to back to back,
oh my god.
and you take little kids to that, and
What are you meeting
it's a
about?
thing. Well, there's like the sacrament meeting for the first hour, and then like a Sunday school, and then the third meeting. The men have their meeting and the women have their meeting the third hour.
Oh my
So
god.
That's intense.
Well, then I'm.
What is that meeting like? Is it just like, I had to mow the lawn again, or like how are those meetings different?
Which meeting do the gender fluid people go to?
Oh my god,
Ah,
Brian, I'm gonna
I don't
slap
think
you.
the Mormons have
In the
addressed
bathroom.
that issue. But the so the men they're called the priesthood quorums, and the men are in different groups, and they have lessons, sermons,
How good
and
is priesthood corn? Like, what's involved? Is that like do you boil
that's
it
like
and then eat it right off the
oh
cob?
corn. Oh my god.
I'm kidding. I heard what you said.
If Wesley married a gender fluid person and she'd be like, well, I'm half between man and woman today, he'd be like, all right, make me half a sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Brian,
He'd be
I'm
like,
gonna
you
slap
could peek your head in the
So
meeting
what was
halfway through.
when was the last time all of y'all been to church?
Oh no, actually, my niece's baptism.
Yeah.
I went the Friday before Easter, but the last time I went on a Sunday just for myself was probably when I was like 20 or 21 years
By
old.
yourself. Okay, I never did any of that. But the last time I went was for my niece's baptism as well, and I was the only one that wasn't praying or closing my eyes or anything.
So funny
And
story
nobody
about
stopped
going to
because
a
everybody had their eyes
baptism.
closed.
So my sister asked me to be my niece's godfather, and I was like, all right, cool. I'll do a funny voice, and you know what I mean, like that. Give her nicer presents than whatever siblings my sister should choose to have. And so I get there, and
Put a horse in her bed.
my fucking my fucking Catholic guilt immediately starts taking over as this deacon is talking to me like, yeah, so the priest is gonna ask you if you're confirmed Catholic and blah 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 blah, and that you're promising to help raise her in the church and this that and the other thing, and I'm like, oh fuck, and I look at my sister and I was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable lying to a priest. She looks me dead in the eyes and goes, "You goddamn better."
Yeah, go to confession afterwards and watch him be the one in the booth.
It was so fucking awkward though, as this priest is asking me and like demanding that I affirm that I'm gonna help do this shit that I care nothing about. Oh man, I felt so fucking guilty.
Like I'm hoping that my sister asked me to be my nephew's godfather, even though I don't believe in any of this shit. But I would be uncomfortable with asking that too. Yo, my mom wanted me to go to church on Good Friday and Easter. Like, yo, I haven't been to church in years, and you want me to go to a mass on Good Friday or Easter? That shit is gonna be packed. I'm gonna be standing there for hours. Because there's no way you're gonna get a seat unless you get there really early. I don't want to stand there. Like, fuck out of here. I don't want to do that. Like that shit sounds crazy to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us on Patreon if you want to help support the podcast. Search for Lost Context. You can find us on Facebook with our page. Search for Lost Context. Or YouTube. You can find us on Podbean and iTunes. If you want to join the group, shoot us a message and we'll give you an invite. I guess that's all for tonight.
And if you want extra content, go to www.bertmacklin.com. That's bertmacklin.com.
And if you want to help me out, you can send money to me on Venmo. My Venmo is at
we're muting Lozano.
All of y'all listening, repent.
Yeah, repent.
Venmo me.
Repent of your memes.
I also accept Chase QuickPay.
Ugh, I'm calling that the end.
Lost on a road somewhere, car tire lost its air. No one comes around. Rain is the only sound. Why'd my cell phone die? I let out a sigh, tired and cold and wet, and I am hosed, I bet. Darkness creeping in, there's trembling in my chin. Who just see. I stare breathlessly, figures moving round. Rain's the only sound. Something hits the car, creatures near and far. Reach back and grab my gun, preparing for the fun. I jumped out of the car, night as black as tar. Upon the roof I see two bright eyes staring back at me. It was a big bad ugly 3D zombie standing on my roof, and he had pointy striding zombie teeth that shimmered in the night. I raised my gun and blasted him, but then a whole bunch more, they joined in. Surrounded, there was no way out, so I swung my gun and gave a shout. Like, no more zombies, no more zombies, no more zombie shade. Do away with zombies, do away with zombies, dispose of zombies. They ate me.